I'm scared shitless. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. 4 guys, all post-grad, making $200 every 2 weeks, doing laundry at my parents' house. It was not pretty, but it felt right.
No money, no experience. Every reason to quit. 0 reasons to stay.
I went through a pretty vicious mental cycle, bringing stress and disconnection to my relationship at home. I questioned it. I went to a staffing agency looking to get other opportunities.
Phil didn't leave. And that decision, the one he couldn't explain, turned 4 guys in a room into a company of 130. That caught the attention of the biggest brands in the world.
That company went on to get acquired for over $1 billion.
I asked him how he knew to stay when he had every reason to leave.
I wasn't able to see that. All I could do was feel it.
He couldn't point to a spreadsheet. He couldn't point to a mentor. He just felt it.
I just kept going back because I naturally gravitated towards that energy and I followed it, even amidst times my mind wanted to question it.
This episode isn't about business strategy. It's about the signal underneath the noise.
All of us are getting this data. It's just, are you listening or are you able to feel it? And then to have the courage to even say, yes, I'm going to go walk in that direction.
Phil and I go deep on how to hear our intuition when our fear is screaming louder.
This is the divinity of timing, where these things line up and lock in. You're living what feels right to be you.
And why entrepreneurs who master their emotions first are the ones that build things that last.
What version are you going to wake up and be living you? Just listen to what you feel and then make your moves.
Welcome to Intuition of a CEO. I want to take a moment to thank you for being here. This channel is small, but it's filled with high quality people like you who care about growth, emotional intelligence, and becoming the kind of leader who's guided by intuition instead of noise and chaos. If that resonates for you, just take 2 seconds and double check that you're subscribed. If you have entrepreneurs or professionals in your life who you care about, please share this episode with them. Let's be guided by your intuition and dive into today's episode. I want to start off I want to hear a bit of your background. Like you and I met on I love you do like the morning hike or whatever, like not doing the coffee thing. How'd you come up with that?
It was just, so I'll go back to, I'll give you kind of some of the background of me and then what led into that. Coming out of school, I studied design in school, a traditional design, like not like web design or anything, just, ad graphic design, advertising, typography, like the hardcore basic stuff. But always was a doodler, always was a guy that was creating things. If you can imagine, like I was a kid that had the room that was full of the character drawings from ceiling to floor on like notebook paper. That was who I was.
Yeah.
So okay. I found my way into design and then jumped out of college after getting that degree into a startup, which was right after kind of the wave of the .com boom. So the internet was still the Wild West. A lot of things didn't exist yet. There was no social media, barely any social media. YouTube didn't exist. No CMSs exist. Like nothing existed on the web. You were still very developer centric to make things happen on the web. Commerce didn't exist, nothing. And so I jumped into a time when it was like really new and fresh. And I learned the ropes of design and the constraints and all the things that came along with digital design, user experience design, and spent 12 years building a business. Ended up growing that thing from 5 to 130 people, left in 2017. And then that company went on to get acquired for over $1 billion, which is pretty cool to tell that story.
What was the name of that company?
Dynamit. It was a digital agency here in the East. Yeah. So they got acquired by a company called Willow Tree, and then Willow Tree got acquired by TELUS Digital, which is one of the largest digital agencies in the world. To answer your question, roundabout way, giving you some history. When I left Dynamit, I was kind of going through a re-identification of who I was, right? Like anytime you go through that kind of crucible of changing what you do, there's a lot of this identity pinging that happens. And so I was getting a lot of people reaching out and saying like, what are you up to? What are you doing? And I had so many coffee meetings, so many happy hour meetings. And it wasn't my lifestyle. I like the outdoors. My family and I travel. We take our kids to the mountains. We love being outside. We moved to a place in Ohio that has nature and trails in the backyard. And so I just started telling people when they'd reach out and say, hey, do you want to get a coffee? I'd say, hey, do you have hiking shoes? And when they would say, yeah, I'd say, let's go for a hike instead. And they loved it. And everybody loved going out on the hike. So I do the morning hikes with people and things like that, or afternoons whenever they can do it and it works with our schedules. But it's fun, moving, nature, great conversation. Always more fruitful than sitting in a chair for an hour.
Yeah. No, I think who introduced us? Was it
I think
Reynolds?
Anthony.
Reynolds. And he's like, you got to go on a hike with this guy.
And I love it because I don't drink coffee. So I'm just
Yeah,
like,
me either.
oh yeah, for sure. So when people are like, hey, you want to get a coffee? I'm like, that's like the last thing I want to do. And it's funny when you tell people that you don't drink coffee, they look at you like, I'm like, I didn't say I punch babies. I said I don't drink coffee. And they, well, so the thing is, if you say that, they'll think it's haha, it's funny. You said punch babies. Like you're laughing when I say punch babies, but you're offended when I say
I don't drink coffee.
yeah, don't drink coffee. I'm like, oh, murderer. Like he's a Nazi. Like no, I just don't drink coffee.
Say it on that front for sure.
Yeah, but then they'll talk to you like what happened. It's not like alcohol. Like I don't go to the bar because I used to drink too much. It's like coffee. I just I don't know. But yeah, it's to get a little like woo woo hippie. It's kind of refreshing being like nature and definitely change of pace on that instead of just getting coffee.
Yeah, and I think there's a connection too to, it's such a small practice, but I'm a huge believer in like embodying what you believe to be true about yourself. And it's easy for anybody to like, especially if you get somebody that like you aspire or somebody that's like maybe farther down the line than you. It says like, hey, you want to go to happy hour? Hey, you want to grab a coffee? For you to just kind of say like, sure, instead of like speaking your truth. And so that became like such a subtle practice for me in saying like, hey, like this is who I am. This is what I enjoy. I'd like to welcome you into that world too. But I think that's like that subtlety is like a really important piece about maybe a topic we'll talk about in a minute, a little bit, but about speaking this like resonance of energy that you feel inside of yourself outwardly and seeing the results of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're kind of like guiding the relationship and the dynamic. Instead of saying I don't drink coffee, you're like, well, here's actually something I do, and
Right.
which is great. So through your journey, so it sounds like right from real young, very creative, and getting into like right away startups and wanting to create your own business. Tell me about a situation that you felt like you listened to your intuition or use your intuition to guide yourself through decision making.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So early on, I would say that like in reflection, I didn't necessarily like jump into that ship saying like I want to build a startup, which it's funny to reflect on now because it's very much like who I am now. But I think at that age, I mean, what I was like low 20s, 21 years old. Um, I was like very much still in tune with that kind of like what I'll call flow. Just like this is where I'm going. This is what feels right. I'm gonna see what happens when I go down this path. And I'd say that was like a big one for me. This company when I started was four guys, all the same age. We were all post grad, coming back, starting a thing. My two managing partner founders, they had just come back from continuing ed studies and said they wanted to build a business. And it was kind of ragtag. It was a bunch of guys that were like very similar in archetype, all with different discipline mastery. But at a time when like startups and things like that, like the whole ecosystem wasn't as like big and rampant as it is today. And I remember walking into this office and being like, I like these guys. Like, and I had just met them weeks before. I like these guys. I have good energy with these guys. I'm scared shitless because like I don't know what the hell I'm doing because I have no experience in digital design, web, anything. And I remember saying like yes to that, being like, this feels good. Let's see what happens. And that was like one of many. But per the conversation that I was having with my friend last night, who's another guy that speaks the language as you and I have shared, we were talking about sometimes I butterfly affect my life and I'll just go back into these like seminal case study moments and I'll say like, man, like I chose this. And to put an end cap on the startup thing, like when we went out, like we weren't doing like big things. We weren't funded. We weren't anything. It was all grassroots. All of us were making no money. It was like maybe $200 every other week. And I was still kind of like scrounging dollars to like, I was going between my girlfriend's apartment at the time, my mom and dad's house to do laundry, doing this kind of startup thing with these guys as we were getting clients. And it was very much like not pretty, but it felt right. And I think a lot of people like yourself probably resonate with that because you've gone through something similar. And I remember a moment when I was like, I questioned it because I was like, oh, I don't like this like scarcity feeling of financial strain coming out of college. 6 months after you graduate, college debt starts to come on your chest. and all this stuff starts to stack up and you're like, whoa, I need to actually make some money. And I remember I went to other companies, a creative staffing agency, and I was like, hey, I'm looking to get other opportunities, because we were still kind of just like flowing. There was no like contract. There was no like you're employed here full time. It was very like ragtag. And I remember I talked to my partner, Matt, that day after I had that creative services interview. And I was like, yeah, man, like I'm just feeling like I'm going to keep my doors open, like see what happens. But I just kept going back to Dynamic. I kept going back, and lo and behold, like a year or two later, like we got serious and started to make some money, started to get some bigger clients, started to learn a little bit about running a service-based business, learning the value of what we were doing and how to price it. And we moved into an office downtown Columbus. Like we had 5 official hires. We all got on W-2. We started making a nominal salary. But I'd say that like, if we're in the context of like mixing like entrepreneurship, business, and intuition, like that was one of the first moments where I was like, I just kept going back because I naturally gravitated towards that energy and I followed it, even amidst times where like my mind wanted to question it. Like, ooh, is this enough? Like, is this going to be a thing? And then obviously like the story rolls out. I spent 12 years there and we had global clients and I made a lot of money every year and it worked out. Right. But in the time, like I wasn't able to see that. All I could do was feel it. And I think that's a cool topic to explore, and this topic of like intuition and following your intuition.
Yeah, yeah. Well, tell me more about like your like what was the pull bringing you back, or like what was, it sounds like there's some thoughts or like some doubts of, I guess like for me, a doubt would be like, is this like real, or am I still like being like a kid almost? Like when am I, is this, look, my dad would always kind of be like, I remember there was a trade show I went to and basically got Boeing as a distributor for GritMat. And my dad's response was, "You think they would hire you?" And I was like, "No, they're like buying
They want
the
to buy the
product."
thing I made that.
Yeah. Like they're selling it for me. They're like, he's like, "Yeah, but like you're only like charging like this much per, like how many are they really going to sell?" I was like,
You're like, you just say that.
yeah, Boeing, like I thought that would be enough, but
Yeah.
I mean that was also years after working on GritMat.
Yeah.
Before that was just even way less of like, what am I doing? I'm literally in the beginning. I'm sneaking into the labs on campus to make a mold. Like what the hell? But yeah, I guess that inner voice that was almost like steering you away. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I love that question. I'd actually say too, the thing that I feel to be true now is that all of us kind of like receive that information in our own way. Some of it might be like a voice in your head or a third eye vision or a feeling, kind of a gut feeling, like I feel this in my belly. Something like that comes up and hits you. Mine happens to be third eye visions. Like it's like even going before school, if you would have asked me where else in your life have you used this intuition, or before Dynamic, I mean, every major thing, like I was a collegiate athlete growing up. I wasn't through my senior year. I wasn't committed to a college. I wasn't freaking out. I was kind of just like waiting for the right opportunity. And I ended up going to a smaller school. But right when I stepped on campus for the visit, I saw it. Like I saw myself going to classes. I saw myself waking up in the dorms, walking the oval that was there, like all the things that were there. It was a vision that I saw of myself. And that's happened numerous. That happened with my wife. Like I was in a long-term committed relationship and always have been kind of a very committed guy. And my wife and I met at Dynamic. And I remember we became great friends first, but I saw then a vision of our life like together in the future, and it scared the shit out of me. And I was like, what is this? Like we're not even considering this. And so for me, like that same pattern has been true over and over again in my life, where there's this kind of overwhelming feeling of like, you need to go this direction. And then there's like some sort of like third eye vision that hits me where I'm like, whoa, like, I don't know if that's going to be true, but it feels true. And so I'm going to believe it and go take the action in my day to day to like put myself in that orientation to go that way and see if it comes true. And I think that's kind of like our role as, people in these bodies, souls in these bodies, whatever you believe, is to kind of like enact in your everyday through the form, like what you feel to be true, and kind of see where that unfolds. And that's kind of like my theory on everything is like, you have the ability to make these decisions and move, and all of us are getting this data. It's just, are you listening or not? Are you able to listen, to feel it, and then to have the courage to even say like, yes, I'm going to go walk in that direction.
Do you think there's a point of a vision where it takes you out of the present?
Yeah. I think that's that moment that I shared with you about financial fear with Dynamic when I went to like look for other opportunities. That's a very real example of how that feeling can easily like cross the threshold to the mind. And I do believe that that's a hard thing, right? Where it's like you feel this so viscerally, and I go through this even today. Like I'm no Buddha here. Like I have these moments every single day where I have a feeling of where I'm going, or even like a desire that's mixed into that. And when it crosses the threshold into my mind and I become so overly logical or so mind focused and mind movement, you lose sight of that and you start to do things that pull you away from like that presence line. That's like, hey, you
Yeah.
know, you got feeling, but now you're trying to control the outcome and make it like how you want it to
Yeah.
be. And like looking back on Dynamic, like I had that feeling that I wanted to make that kind of money now as like a 22-year-old or 21-year-old. And then I just waited a year or two and started making like great money. And then eventually, 10 years in, I was making a lot of money. And it's like, whoa, like that did come true, but it came true over a different time horizon than what your ego or what your mind was telling you needed it to be then. And so, yeah, I mean, long-windedly, I think it's easy for all of us to kind of cross that threshold and then live only through the mind's control of that feeling that you get from wherever it comes from.
Yeah. 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 That's interesting what you're saying, because really, if you're like in your if you would have made that money when you wanted when you're in your 20s, it would have been probably terrible.
Yeah, right. I
A
mean,
21-year-old with like a lot of money. So there's almost like a lesson of patience that you learned.
yeah, too. And I think like this is divinity of timing, right? Where it's like these things kind of line up and lock in. And I think there's this like interesting mixture of like trust and resilience and creativity, like all these things that you need to walk that path, because it's not going to end up how you might think it or even see it, but you'll live it, and you can live it every day. But yeah, I think that divinity of timing is like something that's hitting me too right now. Like a lot of things become pretty like circular in nature when you let them unfold. But man, like it's very easy to get caught up in the artificial sense of control with the things that you're
Yeah.
doing in your life.
For me, okay. So for me, growing up, I was huge with Legos, always building things with Legos. I'm a huge fan of Legos, and
Yeah,
I,
same.
it really, so what happened was, if I could not be playing with Legos, let's say, for an example, my mom, she was going to jury duty, and I was just a kid. I had to go with her. So what I would do is I would take my books of the instructions of the Legos. I'd bring them with me, and I would look through them, and I would think of new ways on how I could like get them to work together. So, so just as doing that, I think really built really strong 3D imagery skills in my mind.
Right.
So I didn't realize that I had this strong skill as a kid until I was in high school and I did a CAD class, like you draw on the computer. And I'd be sitting at lunch with other kids in the class, and we'd be talking about how to draw something. And I'd be like, that doesn't exist. You can't make that. And we'd be arguing about it. I'm like, you can't put a hole there. It just doesn't work. And then then we get in the class and they try to draw it. I'm like, that's what I'm saying. It's like that, you can't do it. But so because I had this like strong 3D imagery, it gave me really strong like ability to have a vision.
Yeah.
So the thing is, people all the time will say things. I had an out of body experience. I could see my body from the outside. And I'm like, if I close my eyes right now, I can do that. I can visualize the room. I can. It's hard for me. It's like a blessing and a curse, to the point where I can, my mind will get like so hard into a vision where it's like, okay, I'm not here right now. I'm constantly thinking of the vision that's going to be in the future. So I'm always future tripping instead of just being right here. Like right
Right.
after I got a deal on Shark Tank, with 3 sharks, I was not in the present. I was just like, okay, well, I got this other event to do.
I had to get to Vegas for this other thing. And so I guess for you, where would you say the balance is of that vision and the present?
Yeah. Great question, man. And I have complete empathy for that. Also a big Lego fan. I actually have my kids got me a Batmobile, there it is. Look at that. My kids got me a like F1 car and a Batmobile to put together, which they all love putting together with me too. So I've got a 1,000-piece Batmobile to put together.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
so the question's a good one. I don't know if they're like a silver bullet. I think a couple things come up for me that resonate, and I'll share those just and see if they hit. One is this idea of like balance. I think that there's like a in all things, there's like a seasonality to everything. Like right now we're in the dead of winter in Columbus, right? Like things are dead and dormant and like nothing's really growing. So there's like a lot of and externally, right? Like the roots are still doing their things, blah, 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 blah. And the same thing is true for us, right? Like we're gonna go through these seasons of life where you might be, and I think about it more like a pendulum, where you're like swinging towards one thing and then you're coming back to other things. And so in modes where like you and Shark Tank in that mode or season of your life, there was probably a lot of like external exertion. Like you were like, I'm gonna do this thing. There's a lot of momentum here. I'm going to go after this. I've just got three sharks to help me grow this thing. And you were swung in that direction. And then like you probably started to recalibrate and come back down to the middle, and then maybe even swung the opposite way in some ways too. And so I think all of us kind of ride this like pendulum wave in our life. But I do think that there's like a practice to like recognize when like you are like not there. Right. And without being like cliche and things like that about like meditation and everything like that, I really think it just boils down to like becoming an observer of your experience. Like if you
Yeah.
can find some modality that allows you to like pause and like recognize the patterns that are happening in yourself, like, oh wow, I'm having those incessant thoughts about money again. Or oh wow, like I didn't even stop to pause and like be grateful that Mark Cuban's like, sure, let's do this. Like like all those things can like they're happening all the time. But if you don't have a skill to say, whoa, like I'm seeing the patterns, then you're always going to get caught up in the momentum of life and others' energy and the energy of just life in general. And so I think like that's my only like practical how-to thing. And that question is like find a way that feels good to you to become an observer of your patterns, because then you can say, wow, like I am a little out of balance right now. Like let me do something different and I can choose differently. But yeah, man, it's a tough thing. But I've given myself a lot of grace over the years too, because I tend to be a little obsessive too in my pursuits. And if I find something that I like really like grabs my attention or gives me that vision, I will like dive into it and even like be thinking about it when I'm with my family and things like that. And that's one of those modes where you can kind of be like, oh, like here I am obsessive on it again. That's okay. Like I'll return to it and come back to it another time, or I'll say yes and like, hey, I actually want some more time doing this thing right now because like it's very like omnipresent in my experience. Like let's go after it. So yeah, man. I mean, like pendulum, the seasonality of our life and like the momentum, but then also like becoming an observer of your own patterns and your own data as you're going through anything.
Yeah, I think that there's these throughout your journey, there'll be things that I see for me is there's things that I used in order to survive, where now I'm like past it, where this I don't need it to survive, but it's still like a tool in the toolbox.
Yes.
The obsessiveness is like, yeah, I still have it. I can still dive in deep and or let's say a grind culture. I was always like, we gotta grind, like work so much. I can work hard. I can go back to that, but I don't need it to survive. So
Yeah.
I'm not anti working hard. I just don't need to do it.
Yeah.
The negative consequence of working hard or grind culture is burning out. So the thing is, if that's the only tool in the toolbox, you'll end up burning out.
Right.
Um,
And I love that perspective. And I think there's a, like part of that like pendulum nature is that like every time you swing back, like you're bringing back new data. Like
yes.
you might have swung this way in your 20s and you swing back in your like early 30s and you're like, whoa, like I don't need that anymore. Like I value other things now and
Yeah.
I now want to travel more and I want to like have more time with my kids. Like, so you're bringing back data with you on every swing. So I love the metaphor of a toolbox because it's like, yeah, if I want to be obsessive about a creation or a vision, like I can go there. But now I'm balancing it against other criteria that are also important in this season of life. And
Yeah.
I think that's really the game, especially as a builder and an entrepreneur, any sort of creator, is like finding that harmony with that season and like who you are then, and then also what tools you're using in order to achieve the thing that you ultimately want.
Yeah. I like what you're saying about the pendulum, because in my mind, like the way I view it is almost as like a circle. So like you're starting here. Let's say it's having a vision. Some people, that's like a new concept. Where like when you first, here's a circle, goes like this. First, like you're learning how to use a vision. You don't really understand, but then at the bottom of it, you finally get it, and then you're getting a lot of gain from it. And then you're getting like the top half of the circle. You're like, using a vision's like great, but then there's a point where there's almost like an expiration date where it's, for me, I was like trying to vision everything, and then I'm not even being present. So I almost like made the full circle where I hit a point where having a vision isn't useful. But the thing is, if I keep going in a circle, it's actually more like a spiral up. If you can envision that. So I was looking at it as like a spring. And so okay, this whole vision thing. Okay, now I'm like, okay, don't have a vision. I need to be present. Okay, I'm meditating. Okay, meditating's hard, and then it's like easy. Oh, so much growth from meditating. Then now it's like, okay, I can't be meditating 16 hours a day. I'm awake, so we gotta. so now, okay, now it's all. I think of it almost as like a spiral staircase. And the thing is, there's a point where you want to, like, let's say you need a spiral staircase to get on the second floor. You have to go around so many times to actually get to the second floor.
Right.
You can't just go around one time and be like, why am I not at the top? You got to go around a few times. And every time you go around, like if you think about a spiral staircase, if it was like outside, every time you go around, you're seeing a little bit more all around you.
Yeah, different view,
like
right?
A little bit higher. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. So your view is like enhancing every time.
Yeah, I think that's where you bring the data back, right? It's just like I use a similar metaphor, especially when I talk to people that are kind of going up that staircase of like, if you think about like a bug on the floor of the forest versus like an owl that's perched up in a tree, it's like that owl's vantage point on the floor or on the forest is so different than the bug that's on the ground floor. And I think that's what you're alluding to also, is that like you start to ascend in this experience of life and like these things that you're doing, and you're collecting all this data because your view is changing and all these things are changing. And so then you have to, by nature, change the way that you move and that you act and that you are, because a lot of that legacy stuff won't work in that new floor. It won't work anymore.
Yeah. I find myself at times, one like that spiral staircase metaphor. I need to like remember that is different than the financial bank account. Financial bank account will go up and down, but the thing is, if you're high enough on the staircase, it doesn't matter what your money is. Like you can figure it out. That's just like one that like, to me, the finances is at best like one tool in the toolbox. Like we don't need it to survive. It's we can find a way to get it. We can, if it's just hustling for a while, which both of us have already done. If it's getting a loan, partnering with a friend, whatever it is, raising money. So it's there's points where I'm like, man, I should have went all in Bitcoin or whatever. And something that's hit me recently is, okay, so two things that's been kind of playing in my head. There was one podcast I listened to. A guy said, if your life was a movie and people watching the movie, what would people in the audience be screaming for you to do? Like, check the closet, the killer's in the closet, like what is that thing in your life that they're doing? And also another thing I think a lot about is, all of us can say 10 years ago, we should have bought more Bitcoin. We should have bought NVIDIA, Tesla stock, whatever. But if we like look at our lives right now, what is that thing in our lives right now that we know is going to take off? That we know is like, this is worth my time. It might not just be like a stock. It might be relationships. It might be, you told me that you've been getting really deep into, was it like psychology of kids?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that to me is, maybe that's the thing, is like the version of Bitcoin or Tesla is, investing time in your kids.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this phrase that I've been using too, which is related to the energetic thing that we were talking about earlier with your intuition question, is I think you really have to pay attention to the patterning of where you naturally go, where you naturally gravitate, right? Like there's something to be said. Like I'm watching my wife do this, like she's going through this like health discovery journey because she has a lot of stuff going on and she's been told by, traditional doctors and things like that, these things are happening, but she's like so passionate about going into this thing And we had this great conversation about it the other day where she was like, I feel like I'm wasting time. And I was like, I feel like you're building a skill. Like, I feel like you're like accumulating like all of this data and this knowledge. It's going to be helpful for you, but then helpful for so many people. And I told her, I was like, you're just naturally doing this. Like there's no question. You're like on chat, you're like doing research, you're doing all this stuff and you're not even asking. You're just like energy is drawing you to that thing. And I think all of us can look at that energy and say like, similar to you with like Legos and 3D and models and stuff like that, you kind of probably naturally went there. You weren't questioning like, should I do this? Should I not do this? It was like, well, I'm spending time here. Yikes. Like,
Yeah.
that's cool. And I really think that that's
I'm not checking like the salary of people who do that thing.
totally,
You know,
exactly.
it's like,
Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
like
you know,
doing it, so I'm doing it.
yeah. And I think that actually is one of the biggest indicators for all of us is that you can gravitate. Now that might conflict with some of your like desires that you also have. Like you said, like if I'm like, wow, like I really love the idea of teaching children, but like we all know what teachers make from a salary in our world, unfortunately. And it's like, well, do I want to do that? Like, am I okay with doing that and like architecting my life in that way? Maybe, maybe not. And I think that's the art form of like, I guess what I call lifestyle design, where it's like, am I really building this thing in the way that I want? But ultimately, like all of us are getting that data feed of like, whoa, I'm spending a lot of time doing stuff. Like I told you, like I would spend hours in my room drawing. Like I would just create characters. Like and I had sketchbooks full and I excelled in art. Like every art teacher was like, are you going to art school? And I was like, maybe, I don't know. I play baseball too. Like it was like all these things were just kind of like, I'm just kind of doing them because like I like doing them. And I think that that's for me, like one of the biggest unlocks recently, even in my 40s, I'm like, man, like follow the thing that's pulling your energy in that direction because there's something there that you might not know logically, or I call it like seeing over the hazy horizon. Like you may not be able to see over the hazy horizon, but like that pull is putting you in like an orientation to like march towards that. Even if you don't know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. There's I had a friend of mine who's into real estate, and I used to have this like a really big line of credit, and I was like, hey, I could have this like line of credit. You know, the rate is actually pretty good that I could end up getting a place. And when I was 21, I bought a house, and I ended up selling it like 5 years later or so. And I hated owning that house. So it was like my friends telling me all these like, it's really good, real estate's great. And I was just like, should I do that? And where what you're saying about the energy thing, I'm like, I was in that specific situation, the complete opposite. I was just like, and I remember later thinking, okay, what's like my intuition saying right now? And then I'm like, yeah, that's like a terrible decision. That like sounds stressful. I don't even want to do anything with it. It just so
yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Leave this 100%. And I think that's the interesting part that came up in our conversation last night with my friend was like, I asked that similar question. I was like, when do you think, or is there a time when we can kind of like supersede that, like having to go through it? And I think the answer is yes, if you can like build a deep trust with what we're talking about today. Like if you can build a trust with being like, I'm not feeling that. Like, I don't need to buy that house. Or, oh, wow, that's a high paying job. And like, I really could like leverage that capital right now, but I'm like, like it doesn't feel right. So I'm not going to go spend a year of my life exploring like if that's right or wrong. I'm going to be like, well, I trust my feelings. I'm going to go this way instead. And I think that that's the hard part in our world, especially as humans, when lots of things are reinforced that challenge that feeling. And you kind of have to go into your own exploration and be like, am I okay with this? Like, am I okay with like the outcomes of this? Yes or no?
Yeah. I definitely agree with I think there's almost like trust building with your intuition, where thing is my intuition saying, don't get into real estate. But normally in that situation, what would we do? Let me text my dad.
Right. Let me take this and put on something else outside of me for sure.
Yeah. It's like if you were the expert at something and you fully understood the full situation, and then you told Tom, do X. And then I was like, okay, yeah. Let me ask my mom first. Oh, mom says X. Hey, we're going to go do X right now. So you'd be like, I just told you, what are you doing? Like, that's not.
Yeah. Not trusting totally.
Yeah. That means I don't trust you. So yeah, I definitely, Yeah. You don't trust your own intuition yourself.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and I think that there's almost like this subconscious like calculations with your mind where you're just like you almost can't verbalize it, but it's just like a feeling. People say gut feeling or whatever, and it's like this is this person, this situation, this opportunity or whatever. It's just not it. Yeah, on paper I could see fine. Real estate's never going to go away or whatever, but
Yeah.
it's just not it.
And then that's why I said I don't think there's a silver bullet. I think it's like so
Yeah,
unique because other people like me, like I love real estate and I mean, I built my own home. It was like one of the design challenges that I was like, I always have wanted
yeah.
to do that. Right.
The design
And
thing.
so for me, it's like completely different, but that's why there's no like right or wrong. It's just so gray. And the only thing that I think is true is the topic that you're putting out there to your audience and between us today is like that feeling that you have wherever it comes from is usually the thing that is true. It's like the next thing you have to do is like believe that to be true and then honor it and take action on it every day.
Yeah,
Because if you don't, then you're going to go into a state of distrust, suffering, whatever the cycle is going to be. You're going to learn, but and hopefully fast. But if you don't, you're going to spend 5 years, 10 years doing something you don't like to eventually be like, damn, I should have taken that job 10 years ago. Shit.
yeah. Yeah, I think, kind of the little battle between being present and vision is it's okay to have a vision. It's great I think it's actually beneficial to have it. It just don't let that overcome the present. Where just
Yeah.
like you said, the seasons may change. And it's just like,
Yeah.
well, if we still think that we're going, tied to the vision and the seasons are changing, it's like the vision doesn't matter. That's like if it's not the season to be planting seeds, it's just not it. So
Yeah.
yeah. So Phil, tell me a story of when you did not listen to your intuition.
Actually, this one's pretty recent. Like I said, like I go through this every single day. The good news is that like again, back to that, like, can you hijack it to supersede the like feeling of having to go through it? I can do that now. But I'm going through a pretty awesome change right now in my life. My wife and I have created a couple ventures in our life. Allen Key was one. It was an education and training platform where we developed our own, philosophy and framework. We turned it into a book, courses. We ended up, landing clients like Mattel Toys to train people on their own personal growth inside of their career. All those things we were doing for so long. And it was a fun venture. And it kind of catalyzed our connection in a lot of ways, especially as being the thing that we both did after I left Dynamic. But we had kind of like a come to head moment where I was like, yeah, this isn't for me anymore. Like I'm no longer aligned with that vision. And so over the last 6 months, like we've been great in that kind of like Krista's going to continue to lead that venture for us. And I've been kind of exploring like what does the next 5 to 10 years look like for me, which has been really cool because it's kind of a similar moment that I had to like reinvent myself after the Dynamic exit and say, what do I really want? And it takes you back into that kind of core trust truth line. And I've had a bunch of interesting opportunities come up from new ventures and startups to advisorships to high paying career jobs to help, use my skills to like help them do something. And in that exploration, like I've kind of found myself waning a little bit where I'm like, oh man, like got two growing boys, 8 and 6. Like life is dynamic right now. Like the financial things, like I like my curve to be a little bit more up instead of, up and down like entrepreneurship can be. And I started to question my intuition and my trust. And so probably not last week before, probably a couple weeks before that. So within the last like month, I had some like pretty waning mental and emotional experiences in this decision making process because you can't do everything, right? Like it's like you're only calibrated to do so much, and hopefully with that pendulum and the seasons of data and things that you have in your life, you're deciding what's most important to you now. And so I know I can't do like all these business things all at once. And so it became pretty heavy. But what I had to come back to was everything we just talked about today, which is why I'm grateful for this sanctuary to talk about this topic is I spent a ton of time like with my partner in crime, my wife, who is my ultimate coach and mirror, with my community, friends, people that I can speak like this with, and then with myself to like really re-engage that kind of trust mechanism. And a lot of it was what we were talking about. Like I have gone back into the case studies and seen like where I've ended up and how things have unfolded. And I'm like, man, like this is what I feel to be true. I can't see it on paper. It kind of doesn't make sense, but I'm going to continue to do this. And so over the last couple of weeks, I've settled into some pretty big career decisions that will hopefully guide the next 5 to 10 years of my life. and the ventures that I'm playing in. But getting there wasn't easy. It was kind of like a curse of abundance in a lot of ways, where like a lot of different opportunities, but not all of them hit this like mental vision that I was like portraying. And to your point, like it was pulling me up into my over analyzing mode and mentalizing the whole situation instead of sticking in the feeling. And I've settled back into that feeling. I feel very clean and clear. I have alignment from my partner in crime on what to do next and what I can do next, coming from like that vision and truth that I feel in myself. And so now I'm excited. But the within the last month, I went through a pretty like vicious mental cycle of like, woof, like constantly overanalyzing, constantly overthinking, bringing stress and disconnection to my relationship at home and things like that. Like all the things that happen when you become in that isolated state. And I want to put like a visual in there. I'm a huge Disney fan and always have been. Like your Legos, I'm a huge Disney fan. And Soul, have you seen Soul? Have you watched the movie Soul?
No. What's
It's
it
a
all
great
about?
one because you would love it. It's essentially about a pianist and he's a school teacher, but his vision has always been being a part of like a very popular jazz band. And the plot is actually very identical to this topic where he's so fixated on this vision of being part of a jazz band, and he actually gets the opportunity to do it. I don't want to ruin the movie for anybody that hasn't seen it yet, or even yourself. But ultimately, what happens is he comes in conflict with like that vision and how it's like taking him away from what's happening in his everyday life. And there's a scene that he meets a soul in the in between, and he helps this soul like discover a lot about herself because she hasn't had a chance to come to Earth yet. But there's a moment where she goes into this like state where she turns into like Disney visualizes it as like this dust storm, and she's in this void, and the soul is like this light, and it's inside this like cloud of black dust that's spinning around her, and it's she is like overly like mentalizing her experience and like all the traumas and all the pain and all the thoughts and all the things that are not really true about her, the soul. She's making true, and they're visualizing it as this like black dust storm, and she becomes this like monster on the outside, but she's got the soul on the inside. And I always think about that after I've seen this movie because I think that that's what I felt. I felt like I was like in this dust storm, and I was becoming this like not version of myself in going through that like over mentalization of that experience instead of settling into like what my soul already knew to be true. So for all of you that haven't seen that and you want to go see it, it's a tremendous plot. It resonates with this topic wholly. And if you're a Disney fan, you'll love it in general. But that's probably the last time that most recently that I doubted my intuition and got caught in a storm of what it was like to like not trust that.
What was pulling you away from your intuition? Of what?
Scarcity. One of the things that I've been wrestling with, especially in the season as we talk about this pendulum, is like there's this idea, especially in entrepreneurship, about possibility and like probability. And then there's like reality, right? There's like this is real now here, and this is potentially real sometime later, right? And that
That's all with
duality,
startups, right? Like your
yeah, I mean,
stock now is this, but in the future, it's
right. So like it's all you're all betting on these feelings and this inertia and this momentum, right? And for me, I've been battling, I am battling and finding ways to creatively like work through this season of where I'm at in my life and career of like how much weight you put in each one of those bowls, right? Like what's reality and like what is there today and what is like satiating. It's a word I've been using a lot. Like what can satiate you across the board, like connection wise, financially, creatively, like across the board. And then what's there that's also like got some things that are going to stretch you or pull you or have higher risk profiles that like bring you into things that are like much bigger than you are today across the board too.
satiate. Satiate, you mean like satisfy you, or is
Yeah.
okay? Okay.
Yeah. So like that where you're like satiated, I'm like, cool, I have enough financial security. Cool. I have enough like creative exertion that's aligned with what I want to be doing this time of my life. Cool. I'm with the right caliber of people and in the role that I want to be in and expressing myself in that kind of way, like that kind of feeling. And so I think it's really just been what's pulling me away is that tension of now versus potentiality. And so that was really kind of like the mental thing that I was going through.
Yeah, yeah. Like the phrase in my head that's coming up is a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush.
You know, it's like, do I let it go? Like, but they're like, what about 3 birds in the bush? You're like, you know, 4 birds in the bush. You're like, ah, fuck it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I guess what was pulling you away from your intuition was the idea of like a trajectory.
Yeah, it was actually, I think if I were to put a word on it, I'd say kind of like, you know what I mean? Like that you are not, like, your outcomes are not a derivative of the possibility. I think that's the tension, is that in anything that you do in any venture, like like your outcome is a derivative of the possibility. But in some cases, that's not as true. And as an example, like if I were to go like take a super high paying job and also be in a mode of all the other things that I mentioned with like people, creative expression, etc. Like that'd be a little bit more like real, because it's like, well, yeah, like the exchange is like my time. Like I build infrastructure, I do these things, cool. Like I can do that. But then like there's other things that are not there. Like there's some cap. Like you're not. There's no upside. You're likely not doing all the things you want because it's, you know, if it's a larger organization, it's more bureaucratic. But if you were to kind of port that into something smaller, more nimble, has momentum, and has like a bigger curve in front of it, you're like, well, like that's cool too. And so I
Yeah.
think the word that I would put on it is security. Like what's kind of like gonna, and that's where that trust kind of like hit in a lot of ways too, where it was like, man, do you trust this enough to kind of say like you're okay with that in between? Similar to what I mentioned about the story of dynamic. It's like when I had that moment, then I was proven that that timeline was cool. Like I was making $200 or $250 every 2 weeks, maybe, for like years, and doing laundry at my parents' house. And I had that feeling of like, am I satiated in that way financially? Everything else was firing. Like what we were doing, the group we were doing it with, how we were growing, all those things. And I began to doubt it because like I just kind of waned from that vision, and it ended up working out in my favor. And so I think that the trust is like saying like that's gonna always be true. Like I think that's gonna always be true for me. And so that's kind of like the same situation that I'm going through now.
Yeah. Cause there's a point with the concept of security. Like, what are you seeking security in? And are you seeking that as an outside of yourself? Because the thing is, if I have X amount of money, like let's say 100 grand makes me feel secure. The
Right.
thing is, like, I need that to feel safe, where like you're the one who made the money, you
Right.
know?
And you're
Whereas like,
and that number. Yeah.
yeah, right. So it's like what does Phil need to be secure is really Phil. Like that's
Yeah.
the bottom line of like actually feeling. But I mean, I feel the same way of like I feel insecure there of or unsafe really.
Yeah.
And like I need to have more money. Like I had this is a weird saying. I had a panic attack because I had a point where I only had $500,000 in the bank. And I was like in my
Yeah.
20s from like grit. I was just like, what am I going to do? Like you can do anything.
Yeah.
You'll be
Like
fine.
you're okay. You're okay.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting this sense of really sense of insecurity, of you know the root word of security is trust. You know, there's
Yeah.
a point
Right.
where like I'm almost not trusting myself in a sense,
Yeah.
and I'm like at war with that internally.
Yeah. And I think that that's why I think it's been so resonant. Like it's been so kind of like big, is because like it goes back to that like kind of ultimate line that we've been talking about, where it's like the thing that kind of set me off was like, man, like what version are you gonna wake up and be like, you are living you? Like you're living what feels right to be you. And it's like, well, this one for sure. Like this is a no-brainer. And so like I think there's a huge difference between that, what we talked about earlier, that line of like you're kind of knowing versus you're knowing. And like they have like your head and your heart have different, your head and your gut have different like operating systems. And a lot of the times they're kind of in conflict. And so it comes down to, like you said, like you choose, like you're just choosing. And for me, it was like, what story do you want to tell? Like, I want to tell this story. I want to tell the story of me that did that. And because that makes me feel like I'm honoring myself and trusting myself in that way, to be able to say, yeah, like that's what I did. And here's how it played out.
Who are you telling the story to?
Myself.
Okay, gotcha.
I think because
There's-
ultimately, like that's all you have, right? That's all, I mean, like I think about that all the time. It's kind of morbid, but it's like, I mean, like ultimately, like it's just going to be me in a room. Like at some point, I'm gonna be
Yeah.
like, "Are you cool with you? Like, are you cool with you?" Like that's
Oftentimes, no, which can be,
totally,
you know,
which can be really hard for a lot of people to swallow. And I think that's what is undervalued in our world is that like I'd rather be able to say like yes, even if it didn't like pan out how like the mind's vision might have seen it panning out, but being able to be like, yeah, man, like you honored you honored yourself.
yeah. There was I asked you about, this, like, who are you telling the story to? Because there was a point with me where I, I was like, am I living the life that I want to live, or am I living a life that other people wish they could live?
Right.
And it's like, oh, I got to do this really cool thing. It's like, why do you need to tell everyone? Like, if
Yeah,
you really did it for
exactly.
you, and you don't need to tell anyone. And
Exactly.
so, yeah, I think that's something I've been watching is like, okay, if I do actually these conversations, I actually wrote down that I want to start making a checklist. And part of the checklist is I have to remember that these conversations are actually for me. If this never gets
Totally.
out, like the conversation that Tom has with Phil is like the growth that I have from this conversation, that's enough. Anything else is bonus. It's a cherry on top. It's so
I
it's yeah. So it's like, I'm not doing this to get the comments or the likes or whatever views. It's like, if this is what it is, it's sufficient. But I need
enough.
to, yeah. And part of the checklist is, I want to have my mind set in going into the conversations of like, okay, I'm here to learn something. I'm not here
Right.
to, teach someone about intuition. I reach out to them that I want to hear their perspective.
Yeah, I love the phrase. One of the phrases I've adopted in kind of that realm is like I love like places where I can simultaneously be the student and the teacher. Like where I am like offering value and wisdom, but then I'm also like gaining it. And there's like this like
Mhm.
cyclical effect that's happening. And so that's been a big criteria with like a lot of my networks and relationships, people I spend time with is like, is this a sanctuary where I can like, and it's like, cause it's two way, especially in that realm. Like, is the person receiving that? Do they want that? Are they open to it? Am I able to, do I feel like I can offer value? But yeah, like love that idea of like student teacher dynamic in a
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah. I think that's important of like keeping the teacher or the student, keeping a piece of the student mentality. Because I've seen a lot with people where they like learn something, they're like ready to preach it.
Yeah.
Where really they want to be like, yeah, they want to be like the one seen as the one who's preaching. Where it's
Yeah.
just like we still gotta be listening. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've ever heard this, but I in my family we have some teachers, and they would say the
You
hardest
mentioned this.
ones to teach, the hardest ones to teach are the teachers because they
Yeah.
never listen. So like that's the part of the teachers like, okay, we got to take that one out and like make sure we get the part of
Yeah.
the students. Yeah. What's so Phil? I guess on that level, what are you a student of now? Is there something specifically that you like? This is a thing that you're diving into that you're learning yourself.
Man, I mean, like, and this question's kind of ever evolving for me, but again, most recently it's been like my like diving really back into my own patterning. Like, I was telling a friend last night, like, I think that one of my measures for learning is like the recalibration period that you have, where it's like intake to output or intake to like the thing that you want to learn from it comes to being. And like with that cycle that I mentioned to you a few moments ago, I've just been diving back into a lot of like my own patterns, my own kind of design through a lot of different modalities like human design, astrology, like all these different places that I'm kind of like reaching into myself to learn about myself. Gene keys, like all these different ones that I can kind of like reach out to and use as just tooling. That's been a big one lately for me. Another one that's like been kind of ever present for me lately is like I really do believe that the matching of the energy that you feel from that vision is an active practice. It's something that like if I feel I want to like go that I'm going in this direction, that's kind of like my truth, whatever that might be. it is my responsibility, and hopefully I'm just kind of like tugged by it rather than pushing a muddy rock up a slippery hill, that I'm doing things to honor that. And the way that I'm thinking about it and like learning more about it is like almost kind of like energy resonance matching, where it's like, if you like, I'm sure you've like, you're a traveling guy. Like, I'm sure you've gone to like many places where you're like this doesn't, I don't feel good here. It doesn't feel like a place that's like for my vibe and my energy.
London.
And
Yeah.
totally, right? So, like, you can name it because you're like, you remember the dissonance in the feeling, and you're just like, I shouldn't really be here. And I'm sure people feel that about rooms they've been in, or jobs, or relationships, whatever it might be. I think that matching that resonance externally is actually a very active practice, and something that I'm like learning more about, like finding these like energy resonant connections in your life that are mirrored to you outside of you, to find that harmony, to like better adjust yourself and your tonality to what is true. Cause like when with dynamic, like we were all vibrating at the same frequency. Like it was like every single person was like, and it wasn't like a matter of not being diverse. It was like just all of us had the same kind of base vibration. We were like, this is how we think, how we move. And it was kind of unspoken. And I think that can be true for a lot of different things. So I'm learning a little bit more about that, like the matching of that energy resonance that I feel and how anybody could feel, and matching that. The one that comes to mind for me is like here where I live. I lived in like a historic neighborhood here in Columbus, Ohio. It's called German Village, like really cool, lots of diversity of homes, architecture, ranges of value and wealth. And I bought my first house at 24, and it was in that area, it was in that neighborhood when I was working at Dynamic. And I loved it. And I spent 12 years down there, multiple houses, renovated them, did my thing. And I remember a moment when I was walking around the neighborhood, and I was like, somebody your London feeling. I was like, this doesn't match anymore. Like it doesn't match. Like I viscerally remember turning a corner, and like there was like a new restaurant, like hip young restaurant. And like I remember being like, I don't need that. This isn't my vibe anymore. And my wife and I started like driving around Columbus, and just like on a Saturday, we would just like drive around Columbus and be like, where do we feel like we should explore? And we would drive north. We were like, okay, I think it's north. And the road that we live on now, I remember we would drive up this road, and every time we'd hit it, we'd be like, there's something about this road. Like there's something about this area, this road that like feels good. I don't know what it is. And it's like got this cool canopy drive in the springtime when all the trees are green and you're driving through it. And lo and behold, after we had our second son, I got a download from the energy source, whatever you call it, that was like time for me to explore building the house that I always wanted to build. And I found a lot that was on that road.
Ooh.
And it was like my energy kind of knew that I was resonant with this area, but well before like mentally I was even thinking about buying a home in this area, or building a home in this area, or buying a piece of land in this area. But there was something vibrating then that was indicating that this would be the direction. And my wife and I talk about that all the time. It's like there's some sort of like match with your energy and other things' energy that you can kind of like experiment and find.
Yeah. There was a point with, I had a similar feeling. The house I bought was in Toledo, Ohio. And Toledo is definitely on the upswing. Like they're doing great now, but years ago they were not. And I remember I've decided like, okay, I'm going to go all in with GritMat. Like I did a few trade shows, and I'm like, something I would say is no opportunity would be lost due to my effort. Where like my idea isn't going to be, I'm not going to like pull it down myself. It's going to get pulled down because people turned it down. So I remember laying in bed, and I was like, what would Elon Musk do in this? And I was like, I don't know, but I know he would not be in Toledo. And I the next day I had my house up for sale, and I sold it in like a week. And I'm just like couch surfing on friends' places, like out of my car. Like we'll just figure it out. But like I just know this isn't the place right now. Maybe in the future, but I'm like, we're just getting out of here. So,
Okay.
what you're saying about that feeling is, I was journaling, I think it was today or yesterday. When you have that feeling, like your feeling was, this is the road. Just simply not asking the question why, or like seeking evidence why,
Sure.
that is a form of trust with your intuition. That is like a building block of trust that you built with your intuition. It was, well,
Yeah.
why this street? Oh, well, they just added a water line and it's really,
Great.
you know,
Right in the call. Yeah.
yeah, right. The school district's great. And yeah. And that was one thing that happened actually for me. I of the blessing and the curse of the strong vision is I had these ideas for other businesses. I'm like, this is such a good idea. I could kill it with this. And I was like, but I don't like doing this. The best way to start it would be like LA. It deals with airports. I hate going to the airport. I don't want to live in LA. And then I was like, okay, well, like what should I, the idea of, okay, 10 years ago, if there was a Bitcoin or Tesla, like what is that thing right now? And it's like, okay, double down on this podcast. And I was thinking, oh yeah, like exponentially it could grow, or like the it could catch fire on YouTube. Like don't ask. Don't even ask. Don't even look for it doesn't even matter if it worked on YouTube. Like if I get, one thing out of the next 10 conversations.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Within every single conversation, like I'm going to get multiple things out of every single conversation. So I don't need to be counting everything. It's just like, it doesn't even matter. Just, you got the feeling that that's the direction. I'm driving north. Okay. Just drive north,
Yeah. Do the thing.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's what's keeping that at bay from like crossing that threshold. Like if you can kind of like honor that and be like, cool, like I'm going to do those things, use my brain to do the things, but like not get into that like spin and that death spiral and that dust storm, and just keep it like, like this is enough for me. I'm going to go in that direction. I'm not going to look for outcomes that are totally wrapped up in that potentiality or non-reality. I'm going to just like do what's real, what's now, what's here, and kind of like follow that line. I do think that that's one of the best ways to kind of practice this idea of leveraging your intuition.
Yeah. I think, you mentioned the idea of like matching energy or vibration. And I think my background is engineering. So I need things very like practical and tangible. And, we can debate about the energy or whatever, but I think for almost like a simplicity standpoint is if you're matching the energy or intuition, whatever you want to call it, there's a point where you are really reducing your energy into decision making. Like you're actually not even making the decision. You're like, this is it. There's no second guessing. As an entrepreneur, especially a new one, just starting something, you can burn a lot of mental energy and like weigh yourself down on the idea of, well, should I turn left or right? Like, is north really it? Just like north. No, I'm not asking questions. I'm just driving north. Like that just feels right. Is that good? Okay, that's good. It's not like, but south, the real estate in the south is really, you're not like Googling, is it good in the south? You're just, so I think there's a lot of like mental unloading if you can like feel that like trust in the decision making. Where really the thing is, well, what's wild is if you would have drone north, south, east, or west, it would have been okay.
Totally.
But the thing is that if internally we do the decision, the second guessing, that's the part that kills us.
Yeah, I love that distillation down to decisions, because I think that really is what it comes down to. Is like, I think that ultimately like comes down to like a yes or no. It's like, which way, what are we doing here? Go, no go. Like it sounds overly simplistic, but ultimately like it is that. It's like, and that's what I use all of this information for, is decision making. Like if you every moment that we've talked about on this podcast, every moment that I've lived in my journey of life and building things, growing, it always comes down to like, I made a choice. And like, and that's what to what we were talking about with like being okay with yourself and you're alone in a room with yourself. Like, that's it. Like I made the choice. Like I made a choice to say yes to doing this or no to not doing that. And that's what it comes down to, is just making like a series of these choices that you're deciding. But I do think you can be more informed with your decision making if you enact or listen to this thing that we all have inside of us. It's like very instinctive, instead of override it.
Yeah, for sure. I had a cousin who wanted to start a business. And she said to me, I don't know if I should start my website or my social media first. And then I don't know, like we were like texting, and then came back like a month later. Hey, how'd it go? She's like, oh, I didn't know which one to start. And so like the wrong, there wasn't a wrong answer. Like it was really the hesitation of the decision making. We're really, if one just felt right, and then you're like, that's the one I'm going for. That's, maybe, and really what I think is interesting with that is sometimes if there's like that second guessing, if you don't, like in your case, you just drove north. If you didn't know where to drive, sometimes not driving anywhere, not doing anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that I think the choice of like not doing the thing is just as important as doing the thing. And back to your spiral staircase metaphor, in her case, like imagine what she would have like learned and been able to see
Yeah.
if she would have built the website. Like she'd have been
Yeah.
like, oh, there's the next door, there's the next answer, because that action and that momentum, because I was feeling like doing something, led me to the next yes. It led me to the next thing that I should do. I'm a big believer in that, like actioning, even in the form of not driving, uh, is the best thing, because like you'll learn so much in that movement of your intuition of whatever you're feeling, whatever you're building, whatever you're doing.
Yeah. It's interesting, the idea of a lot of times I find myself being fueled off of like wanting to do it right, like really
Mhm.
trying to avoid the wrong, where a lot of times I'm asking the wrong question. It's not, should I start with, do I do social media or a website? It's like in that situation, the hesitation of doing one of them was the wrong thing. Or it's like maybe I'm wanting to start this company out of a scarcity, and I shouldn't be doing any of it.
Any of
Maybe it
it,
just
right?
me, maybe it just, do I do website or social media, or do I just sit and meditate for an hour and then just be like,
Right.
oh, and
I got
that's
it.
the business ideas I was having with like the airport and stuff. It's like, actually just let it sit. Just,
Yeah.
it's not anything right now. Like just let that,
Yeah.
let that come through, because something's bubbling up. Like, okay, I want to be seen for something. There's a scarcity, like I'm trying to get external validation, or like, there was a thing where I felt like my self-worth was tied to having good ideas. It's like
Right.
how I was seen as being smart. Like I
Right.
didn't ever think I was smart, but if I had like a clever idea and then for someone else's business, then they said, "Oh
Yeah.
wow, Tom, that's a good idea. We got to do what Tom said." That's
Yeah.
what I would really want. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
don't don't get back to that.
I love that. I love the pause, like the artful pause. I think that in the same way that you said that trust building is by doing the thing that you feel, it's also by not doing the thing that you don't.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, definitely. Also identifying the difference between the pause and I'm in analysis paralysis. Being in analysis,
Totally.
what do I?
Totally.
You're not.
Th-
Honestly, that's the person who needs the pause.
Yeah. And I think the answer to, if someone's like, "Well, how do I know the difference?" It's like, do you feel at peace or do you not? Like
Yeah, yeah.
is one content? Like, do you feel content, or is one kind of like, oh, this is really fucking heavy. Like, I don't like this state. You'll
Well,
know. Like that's the analyzation. The other one's like, I'm waiting for the divine timing to kind of like show me what's up.
yeah, I love that. It's just, is it at peace? Or really, it's like, do I have the awareness to know I'm not at peace? Okay,
Mhm.
that's what. Well, okay, let's pause. Getting crazy.
Yeah.
Back to pausing. Yeah,
Yep.
I love that. So, Phil, if you could talk to you, when did you start your business? 21.
Well, Dynamic was 2007. Allen Key was 2017. Nucleus, which
Well,
is the other
dynamic,
one we haven't talked. That was
dynamic.
Dynamic was 2007.
That was the first.
Yeah.
You're like 21 then. So he said.
Yeah. Mhm.
So if you could go back and talk to yourself when you're 21, what would you tell that version of yourself about the value of intuition?
I would say like do more of what you've done to be here, right? Like I think what you said a moment ago about like kind of like inaction. I think that if I look back on my life, there's a certain scope that wants to be like, man, you were pretty passive in your participation in life. And there's another scope that is like, wow, you were like really tuned in to like the right time of like when to do things and when not to do things.
Mm.
And if I were to choose, I would say that I think that the latter was probably more correct, that I was probably more tuned in earlier in life and like adolescence, late adolescence, to that timing and that everything is going to work out. Because even the two examples that are pretty seminal in that time for most kids is like where you decide to go to college and then like what your first job is going to be. And I didn't know where I was going to go graduating high school. And I had a vision of like playing Division I baseball. I ended up playing Division III baseball and ended up going to a World Series in Division III, which was great and a great experience. But I wasn't like realizing of that becoming true. I was like, okay with the outcome. To your point about east, west, north, south, it's all going to be okay. And same thing with the job. Like it was my senior year. I was top of my class in my art program, but I had like no jobs lined up. So I started like going to applying for agency jobs and they were all like, great kid, but you have no experience. Like we're not going to take a risk on you. And I was like, okay, like I'll keep trying. And then I got connected to my now life friends at Dynamic through another athlete that knew them because he went to high school with them. And it like all worked out and the timing was perfect. And so I think like if I were to tell myself now, or even him then, like just do more of what you've done, man. Like do more of what you've done. Like wait for that feeling, honor that vision, and you will have the things that you see become true if you participate and walk that line and not get pulled away by it, by the mind, by the artificial sense of control. Just walk that line, man, and stay tuned in.
Or like a sense of trust.
Yeah, trust yourself and trust that thing that you feel. And you know and it's cool because like the time now, I mean, we're 20 years later, right? It's like the intuition when none of that stuff was being talked about, it was like still very underground and like under researched, and there weren't as many practitioners, if any, then. But to have language for it now and like frameworks for it now and stuff like that is really important for people to like realize, hey, like I can do this too. And maybe lots of people listening they've made choices like that before, and to not feel like they're not doing it right or doing enough, just to be like, just listen to what you feel and then make your moves. That's the thing that I would pass down or pass back to myself. Listen to what you feel and make your moves.
Love that. Awesome. Thank you so much, Phil. This is great.
Yeah, dude. Pleasure, man. It's always good to see your face. Thanks for having me on. I'm really grateful for the conversation, the sanctuary to chat like this, brother. I learned a lot too.
I get so energized by conversations like this. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing with those who you care about. It helps us reach more leaders like yourself who want to grow in emotional intelligence and intuition. Before you go, I'd love to invite you to my Saturday newsletter, a 5-minute weekly read to sharpen your intuition and strengthen your emotional intelligence. It's where I share all my deepest insights, both personal and as an entrepreneur. Click below on the top link in the description. Let's keep this momentum going and check out this next episode. It's one of my favorites. I'll be there waiting for you.